Going everyone, it's me Arctic. Today's video we're going to be going over a complete sub DPS guide for Ayaka. Now Ayaka is primarily a main DPS focusing on her auto attacks, however she does have an E spell that does a pretty decent amount of damage, and also her burst is pretty potent, although it does have a high energy cost. So today's video we're going to be talking about the best way to play Ayaka as a sub DPS. I'm going to be talking about the proper weapon choices and also artifacts that'll actually make Ayaka viable as a sub DPS character. If you wouldn't mind, I'm trying to get to 3,000 subscribers. We just recently hit 2,000 and we're making some pretty good progress on our way to 3,000. But anyway, let's get back to the video. So Ayaka primarily is a main DPS, as you guys know. That's pretty much how most people are going to end up playing Ayaka. However, I wanted to make a guide on Ayaka's alternate playstyles, aka her sub DPS potential and also her physical DPS potential, which I will be doing in another video upcoming. But just in terms of her base stats, she is very high in terms of base attack, and also crit damage is a Ascension stat. So what we're basically going to be looking for in terms of a sub DPS is making sure Ayaka has enough crit chance to actually be able to crit with her abilities in order to get the most damage out of Ayaka. What we're focusing on is the elemental skill and the elemental burst and getting the most use out of these. So elemental skill doesn't really do much other than a damage multiplier right here. It has a 10-second cooldown, so keep that in mind. What you're probably going to want to do with Ayaka is do more of a quick swap in kind of build with your team comp. For example, using a main DPS that you can basically just pop on the field, burst damage, and then swap between your other characters. It could be interesting to use Ayaka as a melt reaction support, kind of like using Eula as a melt reaction support, where you do damage just on melt reactions with the cryo. Unlike the physical build, you actually can use your alternate sprint, and the reason why you can't use this in the physical build is because you apply cryo and then get cryo infusion on your blade. But since this is a primarily cryo damage focused sub DPS role, you definitely want to sprint around because you're going to be applying cryo to enemies. However, if you are swapping in, trying to do a melt reaction, I would not use the alternate sprint before you cast your E. I would cast your E and then do the alternate sprint, make sure to get that melt reaction before you end up spinning around. The nice thing about that sprint is that you get 10 more stamina whenever you apply cryo to enemies, and you gain 10% cryo damage bonus for 10 seconds, which is going to help round out some of your damage a bit. Have a very high energy cost. In terms of its slashing damage, it is relatively low at 179%, so I would definitely go for reactions with your elemental skill versus your elemental burst. However, this does have a blade storm damage also, and so each of these is going to be like a little dagger slice, and I don't know exactly how many of these land, but if it's quite a bit, this could be pretty good for DPS. It's not necessarily a long duration, however it is a quick burst damage, and so you're going to want to be able to charge up your ultimate pretty easily, and so we're going to talk about a few of those options. Now, if you are using Ayaka as a reaction support, the Lion's Roar Sword could actually be pretty good, especially if you have it at max refine at R5. And so this one is going to give you some good stats that are going to boost out your damage overall. You get a base stat up to 510, and then it comes with attack percent, so that's going to round out your overall damage a bit, take care of most of your attack percent needs. And yeah, at R5 you can get up to 36% extra damage against opponents affected by Pyro. What you want to do is make sure you're actually hitting enemies affected by Pyro, or I guess Electro, and it'll increase your damage of your E spell, that kind of stuff. Official Sword is probably going to be a better option than the Favonius Sword, and the reason behind this is because since she's going to be mostly using her elemental skill and elemental burst, this weapon will factor in quite nicely. You can kind of use her similar to how you would use Xingqiu, where whenever you hit enemies with your elemental skill, it has a chance to reset its cooldown. And then this is going to give you basically double the orbs because you can cast your elemental skill twice. Now, since Ayaka's skill does have a pretty decently sized area of effect, what you're going to want to do is activate this near multiple enemies, because this skill has a chance of activating on every enemy and every hit that you have. So, for example, with Xingqiu, he has 2 hits with his elemental skill, 2 different damage instances, so he has 2 chances. But Ayaka, since hers is just a single use, you only have 1 chance. So yeah, it's gonna be a toss of a coin pretty much, whether or not you're gonna get that. But this does come with energy recharge, so you are going to be able to get your burst ultimate up very fast. Alley Flash was on a banner, like I think in 1.4, and so this one is going to be pretty good for Ayaka as a sub DPS. The reason behind this is because its base attack is very high at 620, it's going to be very good. Comes with some elemental mastery, so if you are going for reactions with your elemental skill, this is going to help you out just a little bit. And then its passive is also pretty decent for Ayaka as a sub DPS, since you're not necessarily going to be on the field as much and not getting hit. But it increases your damage dealt by the character equipping this weapon by 12%, and also taking damage disables this effect for 5 seconds. So that's a 12% damage bonus for basically all of your stuff. Stirring Desire is probably going to be the best 4-star option in terms of sub DPS for Ayaka. Now, this is going to increase your elemental skill damage by 16% and your elemental skill crit rate by 6%. These are both very good stats to have. It also comes with energy recharge, so you do get your burst up a bit more. And since this was an event exclusive weapon back in update 1.2, you probably already have this at R5, so that's 32% damage on your elemental skill, which is where a lot of Ayaka's sub DPS damage is going to come from, in terms of like if you're reacting, that kind of stuff. Also, yeah, you get 12% crit rate on elemental skill as well. Before, Skyward Blade is probably going to be a very, very good option for sub DPS Ayaka. You get some crit rate increased by 4%. You also get Sky Piercing Might whenever you cast your burst. It gives you more movement speed, attack speed, and your normal and charge attacks deal an additional instance of damage. So even if you're not going like full DPS build with Ayaka, you can still have the option of auto attacking with Ayaka, and this is going to do some extra damage thanks to you casting your burst. And so it has energy recharge, so that's going to give you some good burst uptime, and also it has a higher base attack, which is the main advantage of using this. There's probably going to be the best sub DPS option for Ayaka overall, thanks to its passive right here that it gives you some extra HP, and it gives you an attack bonus based on that, so this balances out thanks to its stats. But it comes with a large amount of crit rate, which is basically what you're using this weapon for. You basically can get all the way to 50% crit rate without even having to need any artifacts, basically just from the weapon. And so this weapon is going to be very good, because then you can run like a crit damage hat versus a crit rate hat, and that is very, very valuable in this game. Now in terms of artifacts, since you are going for a sub DPS role for Ayaka, this Noblesse Oblige is probably going to be one of the better options. Your elemental burst damage is increased by 20%. Also, using an elemental burst increases all party members' attack by 20% for 12 seconds, and this effect can't stack. But that'll basically increase your whole team's damage and give you a lot of damage on your burst, which is what you're mainly looking for on Ayaka. Strayer's in a bit of a weird spot, because if you are going for reactions with your elemental skill, you're going to want to have a pretty decent amount of crit rate anyway on your Ayaka. So this is definitely more of a, if you're going for like a DPS build for Ayaka, I would say, because technically when you're using Ayaka as a sub DPS, you want your abilities to actually crit, and if you're going for reaction damage with her E, you definitely want to have a high crit rate. But this does come with cryo damage bonus, which would be good, so if you want to use a 2-piece of this and 2-piece of Noblesse Oblige, that could probably be a better combo than necessarily like 4-piece of either of these sets. I haven't really heard any confirmation about the Glacier and Snowfield set, however I have seen a few comments of people asking about this. And so this set increases your superconduct damage by 100%, also increases your melt damage by 15%, and using an elemental burst increases your cryo damage bonus by 30% for 10 seconds. This set would be very, very good on sub DPS Ayaka. However, I don't think this one is actually confirmed to be out in update 1.7, which is going to be in Azuma. So this one, if it does get released, you could use the 4-piece on this and it would be pretty good. Last but not least, the Seal of Insulation set is going to be coming out in update 1.7, which is next update. And this increases your elemental skill burst damage by 30% of your energy recharge, which energy recharge stat on Ayaka is going to be pretty good if you want to maintain your burst uptime. And also, this gets a maximum of 75% damage bonus, so as soon as you get up to 250% energy recharge, you're going to be getting that max damage bonus. So this set will be pretty good and decent for that. Alternatively, you can also go with just a flat burst damage bonus, like by using 2-piece Noblesse and then 2-piece of this set if you want to get your elemental burst up a little bit more anyway. And so that could be a pretty decent combo right there. But other than that, that's it for the sub DPS guide for Ayaka. Let me know if you guys liked the video in the comments below. I can answer any of your questions that you guys have. whether or not to use certain weapons over which weapons. I kind of do that generally. But I'm starting to get to the point where I have a little bit too many comments to actually respond to all of them. So I usually only respond to comments that aren't comments on other comments, if you know what I mean, unless they're directly like responses to me. But other than that, it's been me, Arctic. I'll see you guys next time. Farewell.